Hello, today we are going to be learning Likkutei Torah Daf Lamed Zayin, and this is going to be a continuation of the Maimer Shlach, which was begun on Lamed Vav, and then we are going to begin the next Maimer. So what we've discussed so far is the spies that entered the land of Israel and then came back and said they didn't want to go. And we have tried to figure out why, and the Alter Rebbe explains that they were reluctant to go from the spiritual world of the desert to the physical world of Eretz Yisrael, and the physical mitzvahs that were required there. And now we're going to expand upon this more. So it says that when we enter the land of Israel, our first job is to conquer the 7 nations. So the Alter Rebbe explains that this is a metaphor for us conquering our 7 attributes, which means to bring God into the world in every way, both even at the emotional level, and this can only be done through the mitzvahs. And he explains that the Torah, that although the Torah is a revelation of Chachmi Allah, although the Torah is a revelation of divine wisdom, it is nevertheless limited in its function. It can only come down so much as chesed of ilah, chesed of atzilus draws it down. But this is hinted to in the pasuk Ayishal Chacham b'Chachmasai. Don't praise a man based on his intelligence, and the pasuk ends off by saying Ki im bezayis hal, you should praise him with this, which is that he understands liyada ki ani havaya isa chesed, that he understands that God, that the main function of God is his ability to do kindness, umishpat utzedakah ba'aretz, that he does these things, he brings down kindness and judgment and righteousness into the physical land. And so the main goal is not just to learn Torah, but to learn Torah and to practically apply it through mitzvahs. And when we apply it through mitzvahs, we actually bring down everything. We bring down even the source of Torah itself. And this brings us to a second but related way of explaining the Meraglim, which is that the Meraglim were all present at Har Sinai, and what they were taught at Har Sinai was that there's this Torah, and that the goal is to learn that Torah. And so they thought that the way that they were taught at Har Sinai was actually going to be the entire identity of the Jewish people, is going to be that of Torah study, and what they lacked the understanding of the fact that this was actually just a precursor for them entering the land of Israel, and that the main structure of the Jewish religion is that of serving God through mitzvahs. Now the next mimer is V'yamro kol das b'nei Yisrael, and this is a very similar mimer. It's based on the same concept, with a similar question: why is it that the spies didn't want to go in? But what we're also focusing on is that the Yeshua and Kalev, who were the 2 spies who went against the plot of the rest of the spies and did want to go into the land of Israel, they describe it as a teva haaretz ma'id ma'id, a land that is very great, and we want to understand why they say this twice. So the Alter Rebbe explains that the source of the Meraglim is machshava, is divine thought, that the Meraglim have this come from the level of intellectualism, which is why they were part of the Dardeya, this generation of knowledge, as opposed to the land of Israel, which is from the land of speech, which is focused on the idea of practical application, because the main function of the land of Israel is to bring God into the world through sur meira and asay taiv, which means pushing away the bad and bringing down the good, or bringing in the good. And the Alter Rebbe explains that our first job is to remove the bad from the world, because the divine sparks are trapped within evil and within ego and within materialism, and then we can use them for good. And the example he gives is the fact that in halacha, in Jewish law, there are so many restrictions and so many strictures on what constitutes a mitzvah, and the reason is that it's only through this very particular form, and that the divine spark can be drawn out, and that the divine revelation can occur. And so, if one were to wear tzitzis with, for instance, missing a string, or an esrog that was a different color, an esrog that was damaged, this item would no longer be capable of bringing God into the world and of drawing the divine sparks out of the world. Now, understanding this paradigm requires a primer on the idea of igul and yesher. So igul literally means circle, and yesher means a straight line. And what the Alter Rebbe explains is that the igul and yesher is a pattern by which God creates all of creation. That at first, creation takes the form of a transcendent surrounding state, and in that surrounding state, all the minutiae of creation, all the different levels of creation, all the details of creation are combined as one. So the 10 spheres, the 10 attributes are combined as one. Then, when it's brought down lower, it's able to be expressed as individual attributes. And this becomes a repeating pattern, that at a higher level it begins as an igul and becomes a yesher, and that at each level this pattern repeats, and ultimately this finds its way all the way down to the physical world, where we find that divine energy is given to every facet of creation, even those that presumably don't necessarily deserve it. And this has to do with this igul, with these igulim, right? That ultimately, through many layers of igul and yesher, there can ultimately be the final igul, which is the circle of our universe and our physical world, where divine energy can be distributed to all of creation, the good and the bad, at equal levels.